Before influencers, before monetization, before YouTube was even a household name, one video changed everything.
Evolution of Dance.
In 2006, Judson Laipply uploaded Evolution of Dance. We sat down with Judson to talk about what made his video explode, how virality has changed in the last 19 years, and whether it's still possible to capture lightning in a bottle today.
And you really have, one of the first, if not the first, video that just explodes. So what happens? What was your mindset? What were you thinking of YouTube? Did you have any sense that something big was about to happen?
Yeah, not at all. So essentially, if you look back to the early 2000s, the internet was still in its infancy, really. The idea of just the internet in general was not something that was really a socialized concept. Most people use the internet for information. Some people use it for socialization, and a lot of people use it to download songs on Napster or LimeWire and things like that. So I was working as a professional speaker, which I had started doing in the early 2000s. And I created this dance routine called the Evolution of Dance, which was a highlight of popular dance mood. One of my personal themes is that everything changes, and that change is neither good nor bad. Things just change. And dancing was kind of a way to do something fun and memorable that reflected things are always changing. So fast forward several years, several hundred performances later, and a group of students from a high school that I had taught a portion of the dance to asked me if I could upload a video of the whole dance routine so they could do it for their talent show. They wanted to learn the whole thing, 6 minutes, do it for a talent show. And I said, great, how do you do that? And they're like, we don't know, but we're friends with you on MySpace, and we see other people have videos on MySpace, so maybe you could figure it out. So I said, sure, let me do some research. Went to MySpace. I had some friends in a couple of bands. I went to their pages, and they had videos. And in the bottom left-hand corner was this little watermark that said YouTube. And I was like, oh, cool, what's this? Went to YouTube, and YouTube had a great user interface. They had a great step-by-step tutorial that said, take your video, upload it here. Here's an embedding code. All you have to do is copy and paste your embedding code into the back end of your MySpace profile. And we will take that video and put it into your MySpace. So that's what led me to put the video onto YouTube, was to get the embedding code to put it onto my MySpace profile.
Well, and I'm glad that we all really invested in MySpace. That was great that we all had. That was well worth the effort. But yes, got it. Okay, so you did that. It was for school. They wanted to learn the dance. And what happened after that? Was it like lightning started hitting right away, or no? It's just like it kind of slow until someone catches on.
4 weeks later. So I kind of just did it and forgot about it. I didn't think to myself, oh, I'll go check in and see how it's doing. The term viral at that time wasn't even in the vocabulary of most conversations. In 2006, if someone's like, hey, Ben, Tom, so I saw this video of you on the internet last night, and your first reaction would be like, wait, what? Like,
hang on. Huh?
Yeah.
Wait, you're going viral. You're like,
yeah.
Oh, is there an ointment for that? Is there something?
Yeah.
Is there a rub ID? Okay. Yes. No. Okay. Got it.
So about 4 weeks later, I opened up my computer one day, and I had received several automated emails from YouTube that said, so-and-so commented on your video, so-and-so liked your video. And I had gotten a couple of previously and didn't really think much about it. But that day, I think I got maybe 40 or 50. And I was like, whoa.
What was the initial feeling from comments then? Like, what kind of comments were you getting initially?
Oh, great. Everything was great. Oh my God, this is hilarious. I love this. Oh my goodness, this is too funny. Those types of things. The occasional one thrown in there, like, terrible, sucks, the internet is what the internet is. So I go and I look at the video, and it's got about 30,000 views. And I'm like, holy smokes, this is crazy. Like, no way. I remember talking to a friend that I was headed to San Francisco for a weekend retreat with some high school students for like a leadership training. Talking to my friend on Thursday night, we get in Thursday, and we were leaving the next day to go to a remote location. And I was like, hey, this is crazy. I just got like 30,000 views on this video. And again, this is early YouTube. So the idea of anyone watching a video was crazy, let alone having 30,000 views. You're just thinking to yourself, 30,000 people watch this that I don't know any of them. Woke up the next morning, opened up my email, and I've got hundreds of automated emails from YouTube. So-and-so liked your video, so-and-so subscribed, so-and-so commented, and I go and I look and it's at 90,000 views. And I'm like, I mean, I was really like, holy shit, what's going on here? Thinking maybe I'll get lucky and someone will hire me to speak because they saw this video. Like I just was excited about that. Go away for the weekend. No phone, no internet, no nothing. Again, 2006, cell phones weren't everywhere. Come back to a cell phone location. And I think at the time I may have had the new iPhone. I don't remember if I had the iPhone quite yet. It was right around the same time. But long story short, get into range and my voicemail just starts popping off. And one of them was my brother, who at the time was subscribed to a newsletter that Robert Scoble did. And at the time, Scoble was pretty much...
Yeah, he was sort of like the tech, just like the sort of tech trends, what's happening on the internet and things like that at the time. Yeah.
So probably 500,000 to 1 million subscribers on his newsletter at the time, which was unheard of back then. And he's like, hey, not sure if you know this. This is this guy that I kind of get a newsletter from, and he was highlighting this video that he saw, and it turns out that it's you. Are you okay with that? Like, and like, my brother's like, do you know that your video is being highlighted? And so my sister was on another call, and she's like, somebody sent me this link, and I clicked on it, and it's you. And she's like, what's going on? And at the time, it had gone from 90 to 500,000 views in that 2-day period. And so that's kind of when I went, okay, this is different. This isn't just a few people watched it. There's a snowball effect going on here that I didn't know existed.
What effect did that have on your speaking career at that stage?
And so immediately it didn't have a huge effect in that it wasn't like I went from not making a living to all of a sudden making a living. So I was very fortunate that I had been doing it for a long time. I had built up a pretty good book of business. I had already had a bunch of stuff booked for the next 6, 8, 12 months. But what it really did is it gave me a lot more exposure in the coming months. There were lots of people that called and inquired about, okay, I saw this video of you and it says you're an inspirational comedian. One of the things I did in retrospect that I'm so glad that I did is I put my name at the very beginning. All I did is uploaded it into iMovie on my Mac, and they have I think at the time it was called the music video text and location template. Yeah. And so you just typed your stuff in and it put it down at the bottom like it was a music video on MTV Friday Night Lights. And it just said Judson Laipply, inspirational comedian, evolution of dance. And I think it had my website as well. And so that was probably the smartest thing that I could have done to put that in pre-roll.
When we spoke earlier, you were saying that obviously monetization on YouTube hadn't come in at that stage, right? So making money off ads and that kind of thing wasn't an option. So I guess this was an amazing marketing tool in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think when you talk about breaking the internet or you talk about going viral, most people want it, but they don't have any idea of why they want it. Like, what's the actual end game? Are you trying to sell a product? Are you trying to sell a service? Are you just trying to gain followers and you want to get famous? You just want to say a cool story of, oh, I went viral once with this piece of content. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. I had gotten dozens of messages over the years that someone says, hey, I just went viral. I'm trying to figure out how can I maximize this opportunity. They look at going viral as an opportunity, and it can be. But if you don't know what you're going to do to maximize it beforehand, you're probably not going to be able to grab it and maximize it after the fact. Probably the best example that I feel is somewhat impressive in the ability to maximize it is the Hawk 2 girl.
What's one move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time?
Oh, you got to give him that Hawk 2 and spit on that thing.
She went viral in a way that no one had for a while. And for whatever reason, at the right moment, at the right time, and it caught fire. And then she was able to really truly maximize that time frame right up until the point.
Sure.
Yeah, she milked it well, and congrats to her, and get what you can while you can. And then whether or not you agree or disagree with what happened as far as the crypto rug pull and all those things and her ability to recover from that.
If you bought the Hawk 2 coin, you're having a really bad weekend.
The thing was, there was an enormous amount of money that was put into this meme coin by all these people, and then she or someone representing her side of it sold, like instantaneously, and made a huge score, and then the coin was worth nothing.
She had not built up enough trust with her audience before that happened in order for that to like she's going to have a hard time coming back from that because she didn't have that trust and rapport built up. And that's one of the, not downsides to going viral, but that's one of the things. So for me, I was very lucky because I had established a career. I knew who I was. I was 31 at the time. So I wasn't, my brain is pretty much done growing. I kind of know who I am and where I want to go. And so every opportunity that would come my way because of the video, I filtered it through, is this going to help me get on more stages to speak? Because that's what I love to do. That's where I feel most alive. That's my favorite thing to do in the world. So it was never, oh, can I turn this into podcasting didn't exist at the time, but then it might be like, can I start a podcast now and become a huge podcaster?
It wasn't, and then now it is actually a job title to be a YouTuber. It was not a job title to be a YouTuber. It was not a job title
in the slightest. People would be like, a what? Like, you're doing what?
Well, but take me through just the rest of the timeline. I mean, you said the first 2 days you got to about 500,000 views.
So that was about week 5. So this was May. This was the beginning of May, about 5 weeks after I uploaded it, when it went from 30 to 90 to essentially 500,000. Then 2 days after.
Okay,
that.
so it didn't do that much for like first
Correct.
4 weeks,
for the first 4 weeks, it didn't really do. And I don't know what was the catalyst from that. Like, I wish I could go back and see, they didn't have the analytics back then. They didn't have the tools
to know, like,
to
was
be
it
able to
just
find
a couple people
Correct.
or a couple connectors who knew a lot of people who said this is awesome? But okay, so you kind of went 4 weeks, then in like that sort of 5th week, you kind of in a matter of days go from like 30,000 to 90,000 to 500,000. What happens after that? I mean, just if we're looking at present day, I mean, you're at 314 million views on YouTube. We estimate about 1 billion views overall when you combine all the other platforms. So what, 500,000, and I would say that, like, back then it's like there just wasn't so much on YouTube. These numbers, I mean, they're still rare, but you sometimes see like a Justin Bieber video will do amazing numbers or something like that. So back then it was just unheard of. So what happens after that 500,000 point?
So the next couple of weeks, so I was on the road. I was out west. I had a gig in California. I had a couple gigs in California. I had a couple events in like Washington, in the eastern part of. So I was all over the state for the next week, and every day, of course, I'm hitting refresh all the time and just laughing and reading comments and then feeling terrible because a bad comment came through. Like the typical life of somebody that's got a lot of going on content wise, and I go into a afternoon show at a community college in Washington, and I come out and there's a voicemail on my phone, and it's a California number. And I had gotten lots of calls from friends. I mean, again, it's exciting, it's fun. There's people saying, and this is when before text really existed, so it was always phone calls. So I get a phone call, and the message is, "Hey Judson, my name is," it was probably Ryan or something like that. "My name is Ryan. I work with, I'm an employee at YouTube. First off, we love your video. We think it's so great that everyone's talking about it. It's going viral. And hey, I just wanted to reach out because the Today Show called us and they wanted to know if we would give them your personal information, like your contact information. Just wanted to check in with you and see if that's okay. We would love for you." Again, YouTube is still really, really new. So YouTube's like, "We would love for you to be able to go on to the Today Show and talk about how you went viral on YouTube." So it's kind of fortunate that for me, as my video went viral, was the same time YouTube was becoming well known.
Okay, so and they want to promote it because it promotes
them. They want to promote it because
else.
It promotes it, and vice versa. It was kind of like this nice hand-in-hand thing. When the average age of a YouTube user in 2006 was probably 12. The number one video at the time that I eventually was able to overtake was the Smosh Brothers singing the Pokemon theme song in their bedroom. It was like a 2.5 minute video of them like just rocking out to the Pokemon theme song. And it had, I think, 11 million views at the time.
I see. So you said yes, of course. And did you go on the Today Show? Is that what brought it to a wider audience that really takes you from 500,000 to something much bigger?
So it was really interesting because of the timing of everything. So I called the people at Today Show. They called me. We start talking, and they said, "Listen, this is crazy. Nothing like this has happened yet." Really, the only two things that you can kind of compare it to before my video, because again, the brilliance of YouTube was that you were able to just send a tiny single email. It was just a link. That was it. They were the first video platform that kind of blew up where you just sent a link. Everything before that, you had to send somebody the whole video. So Gary Brasila, for example, the Numa Numa kid, his video was an actual video that people, him going, yeah, that was an actual video that people sent around to each other. But if you didn't have a high-speed internet connection, you really couldn't get that video. And then the dancing baby from Ally McBeal was probably another, that was like a little early day video / GIF before those really existed. And people would have to email that. So YouTube's brilliance was all you did is sent an email that had a link in it. So this is still really early territory. So they called the Today Show. We're talking back and forth. It was Katie Couric's farewell tour. She was retiring at the end of the summer. And they're like, listen, and this is May. They're like, I think she was gone. I want to say like June or July 1st. They're like, we are booked solid through the whole month of May. We've got all these things set up for Katie and Fiverr. Let's touch base again at the end of May, and we'll bring you on sometime in June. So I ended up going on in June, and by the time I went on, and I you can look it up on the video, I want to say it was at 70 million views. So the next closest video was at 12 million. So at this point, my video has skyrocketed to the top of the list. So
even before you went on Today's Show, basically like another month transpires from that 500,000, and in that next month you go from 500,000 to 70 million.
Yeah, so I think my intro from the individual known as Matt Lauer, he's like, it's the video that's taken the internet by storm. It's either 60 or 70 million views already on, and you can even hear as he's saying it, like on YouTube. He wants to make sure that he's saying the name right because it's not something that he said a lot. And then that was kind of that was kind of nice because there was a time for, instead of them bringing me on early and being like, hey, you probably haven't seen this yet. At that point, it had been everywhere.
Does the Today Show like help? Do other media outlets come calling, or is it like, no, it's sort of this juggernaut and it's just spreading, or does like their audience help bring it? Or do you notice anything to like a mainstream that's not a, I don't know, internet savvy audience or something like that?
I don't remember anything. One of the things you do when you get it, if you're an unknown individual, which I obviously was at the time and still pretty much am. I'm not trying to say that I'm not anymore. When you go on a show like the Today Show, they don't want you to go on anything else. So they say to you, listen, we want the exclusive. So until you come on to our show, please don't go on anything else. If you do, it's likely that we will not have you on ours. So you abide by that. I don't think I had to turn anything down. Like, I'm not saying that somebody called and I said, no, I'm not going on your show. I'm going on the Today Show. It just happened to work out that I was super busy at that time too. So everything kind of aligned. There wasn't a huge bump in numbers.
At what point do you cross like 100 million? At what point do you?
I don't remember the exact time frame. But I do know from just a fortunate aspect, I was the first video to hit 25, 50, and 100 million views. So I think the 100 million views probably happened. My guess is it probably didn't happen until maybe 2008, 8 or 9. It's kind of like anything, once you see something once, it kind of peaked, it went crazy and then it got up there and then it kind of just peaked out. I would have to go back and look at the analytics to see if I could find when it crossed that threshold. But I was very lucky because, again, it's early days of YouTube. Music videos still aren't even on YouTube because none of the publishing companies knew what to do. They were all terrified that this was going to cannibalize their business, so they're freaking out. They're not letting their videos be shown on there. They're sending cease and desist letters. In 2009, 8 or 9, I don't know if you remember, Viacom sued YouTube for $1 billion and said, you can't have our stuff on your platform anymore. And it was kind of like they were just kind of figuring it out as they were going along. And meanwhile, my little video that's got 30 songs in it is just kind of sitting over here quietly. Like, we don't want to cause any problems, anyone. Please don't be angry.
Did anyone ever come to you about the rights to the songs and things like that? Or like, in all this time, has that ever happened?
Nobody's ever questioned. Nobody's ever said, hey, we don't want ours on there. And I think there's a fine gray line. The legality of musical usage has always been very gray.
But like, also kind of like fair use. You're allowed fair use, and you can do parodies of things and you can do it, but you can't do the entire work where someone could replace listening to this song. You get all
of this legality around it. And so mine's a it can fall into that parody category, blah, blah, blah. But what we also did is, for a while, on my own website because, you get a lot of traffic back in those days. We put every song that we used and a link to the iTunes purchase. So we had it. Look, we didn't make any money off that. There was no affiliate thing. We just kind of did it as a favor because everyone would ask, what are all the songs in there? What a great playlist. Like, what's the actual name of the song? And, people would go into the YouTube video and they would actually write them down. Somebody did it in Wikipedia and listed all the songs out.
And I feel like it also maybe protected you a little bit, the fact that it actually was the evolution of meaning you're going to have a lot of clips.
Correct.
In this
Yeah,
one.
I
so you don't
think
have, you could have just done a great dance routine to, I don't know, Raspberry Beret by Prince, and that's it. But then that would have been like focused a lot more attention than doing this. So what I know Tom is probably chomping at the bit to ask you this. So I'm going to ask it first before he asks you, which is, you've had a lot of time to think about, what are the elements that made Evolution of Dance like sort of the original viral YouTube hit? What is your analysis of the pieces there, the components that sort of came together in this magical way?
Yeah, I've analyzed viral videos. I've lived the idea of a viral video pretty much my whole life, and I've met lots of other people who have had viral hits. I've interacted with people and had great conversations around it. And I think some of the biggest things are, from at least my video perspective, is the quality of the video. It wasn't overproduced. So my video is from, essentially, if you watch the video, the footage is not great in today's standards. It's 19
For sure,
years ago.
Even there, it's a little bit grainy, and it wasn't like produced like this is something that was pulled off network TV or something like that.
It's a single camera shot from the back of the room. There's the audio itself is the room audio, so it's not piped in, it's not mixed in, it's the crowd reaction of the actual dance moves. It was the perfect crowd. So when I was looking to upload the dance video to my MySpace, I went through several different tapes and was looking for the best, clearest video and audio that I had done. Early in my speaking career, I was recording every single show because back then you were making VHS tapes, or I was burning my own DVDs to send to people. Like, we call them sizzle reels. Here's 3 to 5 minutes of me speaking a couple of places. And so you were always looking for footage. So that helps immediately, that it's just a single camera shot in the back. The crowd reaction is captured on the audio. It's not overly produced. From a content standpoint, and this is some of the things that I think are important, nostalgia is a great emotional connector. I think if there's one common element among all things that go viral, there's almost always some sort of emotional connection. Whatever that emotion is, whether it's nostalgia or that awe factor, like, oh my gosh, or I always call it the holy shit factor. You see somebody, you have an expectation of how they're going to be, and then they blow that expectation. So, for example, Susan Boyle and her original Britain's Got Talent audition. She walks out and everyone's like, oh, she's going to try to sing. And then she just absolutely blows everybody away. And so that video was a big viral video because you didn't expect her to be able to do that.
So the pieces you have here, I mean, one, you sort of have like, it's genuine and authentic by nature of not being overproduced. Authentic. You have that, number one. Two, you have this idea of, you're saying nostalgia or just like a connection to an emotion, but this is people like the songs themselves. People can remember, they can recognize,
cheering, and they're like, yeah.
Okay, and you think three, you think the fact that the audience you can hear is getting into it, that helps too. Like, it could have just been you in a room by yourself and it wouldn't have been.
I 100% think the audience reaction is a huge factor, and it builds on the energy. You could feel, in that video itself, you can feel the energy from the audience at that point in time. If I'd have been like, oh, I want the music to be really clear, and I would have lowered that and just overlaid the actual track, I don't think it would have done as well as it did at that time.
I feel like there's definitely two other elements to that video specifically. I think one of them is novelty, because you hadn't seen it before, right? It's one of those things, and another one is curiosity, or at least anticipation. Like, what's next? Like, what next? What song is he going to do next? Like, what's coming up? There's always those elements. I totally agree. There's always emotion. For me, emotion, curiosity, and novelty always play parts in any viral sort of video, and your video kind of nails it.
But you're also saying surprise. I mean, you were using the Susan Boyle example, but like the surprise of it, is there anything, I'm just curious your take on just, certainly there's a lot more ways to maybe be novel back then, but it's novel to Tom's point. But is it just the surprise? And is there anything, I mean, do you contribute any of this to like your outfit? This like orange crush
in hindsight, I think so too.
Yeah. So what about those elements? Like, do you think like, was there a surprise in just your appearance? Is there something about it that is just memorable because of the outfit that if you had been wearing a less memorable color or something like that, that might have been different?
You know, I got a great compliment. So amongst the many cool things I got to do, one year Weezer decided to create a video for their song called Pork and Beans. And they basically just gathered 40 or 50 different viral video entities at the time. So anyone who had been a viral video star of some sort from 2005 up to about 2012, I think is when we maybe shot the video. I don't remember. But you had Chocolate Rain, you had Chris Crocker, you had the Numa Numa guy, you had all these different entities. So I go there and I meet a choreographer who is helping with he's helping like another group to do something. And he came up and he was like, oh my God, I loved your video. And he goes, I'm going to tell you this and I don't want you to take it wrong. He goes, but the thing I love most about your video is I could tell you are not a trained dancer, but you can dance. Like you just went out there and you went for it. You gave it your all and you danced. I know you're not and I'm not a trained dancer. I never took dance classes. So I think that element of surprise of here comes a guy with, I don't even know why at the time, his t-shirt tucked into his jeans, an Orange Crush t-shirt.
You think some of that is like a little bit more of like
I
the
think
surprise
there's a little
of
bit
like this could be my accountant and he moonlights.
Yeah. I mean,
doing
I had
these dances.
highlights. I had highlights at the time because I was maybe 24, 25, and the audience is all college students. So I'm still trying to be like, hey, I'm just as cool as you are. I'm your age. Because I was doing a show that combined comedy and content. And I was talking to these college students a lot about the importance of choices. And listen, I'm not here to tell you what choices to make. It's not my job. I'm just here to remind you that they're your choices. And so whatever it is you want to do, you got to figure out the choices you need. So I'm trying to give them advice about life, but I'm trying to be as hip and cool as I can so that they listen. So I think there's that element of you don't expect me to be that. And I'm not saying I'm a good dancer because I'm not. I'm not going to win a dance competition, but I'm above average. And I was an athlete growing up and I had rhythm. And again, I was talking to Tom beforehand. I had done the dance probably at least 500 times at that point in time. So I had it down. I knew exactly what was coming next and my anticipation of the next move. And, and then you bust out. Of all the dance moves I have that I'm very proud of, my worm was always my best move because I get some really good elevation on the worm. There's two big speakers and two big monitors in front, and I'm clearing the monitors as I'm going above and beyond.
Do you still do it now?
I do not do the worm anymore.
Ah, okay. That's one that fell behind.
Yeah,
right.
I had to pull that one out. I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago when I was like, why do my knees hurt so much? Oh yeah, that's right.
But is it when you speak now, are you asked to do the evolution of dance?
Yep.
Is this
so
this is a mainstay?
Every show?
I still do the evolution of dance at pretty much 90% of my shows. I do other training and leadership things like that where the dance isn't really appropriate, but every keynote ends with the dance. It's now just a little under 8 minutes. So I've added to it over the years as new stuff has come out, but I am slowly going to start sunsetting it over the course of the next 2.5, 3 years. So the anniversary of the first performance ever of the dance is coming up soon. The first time I ever did it was March 2001. I finally found footage of that first performance because early in my career I recorded over every show. I'm going to don't worry, it's coming out soon because it was not good. Again, I the first time I did it, I was just trying stuff. I was just going out and saying, okay, I got to experiment. You got to work on you've got to try stuff out. And I think that's the hardest thing with the idea of trying to go viral, trying to break the internet in today's world is you never know exactly what's going to resonate. Nikki Glaser just did a great job at hosting the Golden Globes, but everyone talked about part of the reason she did so well is she spent 90 days going to clubs nonstop and just doing 2 or 3 jokes each time to see what worked and didn't work. But when you're trying to create content that breaks the internet, you don't know what's going to work. And so you might put it out there and it doesn't. So what do you do now? Do you tweak it or do you scrap it? And so I was fortunate that the very first time I did the dance, no one was filming to put it onto a website somewhere.
What about Evolution of Dance 2? Evolution of Dance, the original, is such a juggernaut. It's a lot less than that. So how do you kind of think about that? How did you approach it? What did you kind of learn from that sort of second pass at it?
So the Evolution of Dance 2, you hit the nail on the head. You have this experience, you have this lightning in a bottle, and then everyone asks you the follow-up question. Okay, what now? Like, what are you going to do now? And so the obvious was, well, there's lots of other dance moves out there. There's lots of other popular. So everything that went into the first Evolution of Dance, the idea was, if you saw the dance with no music, could you tell me what song's being played? And that was kind of the zeitgeist of how it makes it into the dance routine, is certain songs have very specific dances that are attached to it for whatever reason. You wanted recognizable stuff that if you saw it with no music, you would still say, oh, that's the chicken dance. It doesn't mean you didn't want the music with it. It's just, that's kind of how they were connected, that whenever that song comes on, everyone kind of does that dance. So there were lots of other dances that still did that. So the Evolution of Dance 2 was going to be a partner like we were working at the time to find a sponsor. We were working at the time to, because again, I'm still, early in my career. Everyone's talking about sponsorships for money and different types of things. So I'm like, okay, let's see if we can find a sponsor. Let's do a big launch. Let's have some fun with it. I'm trying to build my own brand at the time and expand my brand. Found a partner, found a company to work with, a partner company, and then found a sponsor. So we set all this up. We start getting the song rights because we wanted to do it correctly, because right now there's conversations going on in Hollywood and different places of how are you going to pay. You want to honor the people who wrote these songs. You want to honor the publishing companies that publish them. So how do they get a little bit? How does everybody win? So they had created a rights called streaming rights at the time. Like, they started doing streaming rights. So we went through and we started asking for the streaming rights for all of these songs. It was still really early. So several publishing companies just said no. So for example, Sony, which owned a lot of rights, and every song has at least two rights. It has the mechanical right and it has a publishing right. The mechanical is the artist or a person who wrote the song. And then the publishing one is the house that published it. So Sony is a publisher. They publish lots of things. And each song, sometimes songs have 7 or 8 rights. You just never know, because it might have 4 or 5 people who wrote it. They break it out in half and they sell a piece of that to somebody else and it becomes a commodity. So long story short, we couldn't get all of the rights to the initial songs that I wanted for the Evolution of Dance 2. So we kept working. We got a good list, created the dance routine, practiced it, tried to get it down just as well, filmed it a couple times, lost one right, filmed it again, eventually got to a point where we had the video, we had the rights secured in place. We get close to the launch date. We line it up with another appearance on the Today Show to debut the Evolution of Dance 2 on the Today Show. Then it was going to be released that afternoon. The night before, YouTube contacts the partner that I'm working with and says, Judson Laipply, that channel is not part of our partner program. So we cannot release the video on that channel with ads against it. Because we had worked with a company who was sponsoring the video. Their commercial was going to roll in front. Their banner was going to come up at a certain point in time. So we thought we had everything worked out. And then T-minus 10 seconds before launch, we come to find out. So People Jam was the name of the company that I was working with at the time. And so we sat and we talked and we're like, well, we can't, like, I'm going on the Today Show. We can't not release the video. So essentially it ended up on another channel. So I had to make a video on my channel that said, hey, everyone, you got to go over here and watch this video that you came to this channel.
Do you feel that negatively impact the sort of the viewing figures then for that?
I mean, you never know. It's got 24 million views, which is nothing to sneeze at. But in the same breath back then, if somebody went to watch the first one, they automatically want to watch the second one. And if it's not right there, that's one of the other things I think that makes something go viral is the less. You got to make it easy. You got to make everything easy.
Just remove the friction. Any friction you have
whatsoever. Like the minute that I got to click on something else to go somewhere else, you're just like, whatever.
Well, and how much time was the evolution of Dance 2 after the original?
3 years. So Evolution to Dance 2 is in 2009.
What is your advice now, given everything that's happened to you? For like the internet has changed so much. Breaking the internet. I mean, we were having a discussion before the show about how it's, the pace of virality has sped up, or just to capture someone's attention, like a week is really long. It could be a day where you really go viral. Given everything you experienced, what is your advice for others now, whether that's YouTube or whether that's TikTok or whether that's Instagram story or whether that's something else? What is it? You have a unique perspective on this. I'm just curious to what you tell people who ask you for advice in the current sort of modern ecosystem of virality.
So the first thing I always say is virality is not, I can't even think of the word now, a strategy. So virality is not a strategy. At no point in time should you rely, hope, or wish that virality is going to take care of everything. If we can just get this one video to go viral, then everything works. So if you are, social media, YouTube, all these things, they have lowered the barrier for entry to becoming a content creator. You don't need anything anymore. All you need is a phone, some creative ideas, and a cell signal, and you're good to go. However, when everything is lowered from a barrier to entry standpoint, the barrier to success goes higher. So now, because everybody can do it, being successful at it, and that success has got to be defined by you, whether that's making a living at it or just increasing your viewership or promoting your mission if you work for a non-profit, all those different things. So what you really got to focus on is consistency and quality content to your audience, to those things that, whoever that audience is. And everyone says, oh, but my audience is everyone. No, it's not. Nobody loves everything, and everything isn't loved by everyone. There are very few things in this world that everybody loves. So it's about narrowing down and figuring out who is your audience. Like, who are you actually trying to attract to your channel? Is it people? Is it parents? Are you the Holderness family, and you've got fun? You want parents age 30 to 50 who grew up in the 80s and 90s and now have kids of their own. Like, that's their audience. Now, people will bleed in from other audiences, but that's their focus. Are you a pickleball player and you want your audience to be all pickleball players? Are you a whiskey drinker? Are you, there are so many different audiences. And so therefore your content should be geared towards them consistently, quality, over and over and over again. Because you're building something. You're not trying to create a single piece of content that's going to all of a sudden make your life better.
Completely agree. Can I ask you, we've obviously talked about the evolution of dance. Can we talk a little bit about the evolution of trends and how you feel trends have changed from when you went viral 18 years ago to now, and TikTok and having them almost daily?
Yeah. And again, it's kind of one of those things where over time, things become more normalized. In the early stages, everyone was coming up with cool ideas and concepts to create what you would call movements, getting other people involved, from the, flash mobs to the mannequin challenge, to the Harlem Shake, to what I consider to be the greatest viral entity of all time, the ice bucket challenge, because it linked two things together. It linked something for everybody to do and get involved, but then it also raised money in the same. And everyone wants to create another one of those moments. And the problem is once it happens once, you lose that initial novelty of it. Correct. The sequel's never as good as the original. And so everyone tries to duplicate things or imitate things, and that rarely ever works. So now everyone's trying to come up, TikTok's a great example because TikTok has lowered the attention span for everything, not just how long we watch stuff, but even just the length of trends. How fast is a dancing trend happen on TikTok? So every once in a while, something pops up to the front and it lasts sometimes a few days, sometimes weeks. Maybe you get lucky and you get months, whether it's Old Town Road a couple of years ago, whether it's Fancy Like. And, both of those were really good because they utilized TikTok to help slowly build it. Then the dam broke, and then it went crazy for a long time. And both of those individuals were able to capitalize on that success because they weren't expecting that video to take care of it. That was just a catapult to the next level. And then they continue to work hard and continue to put out content and continue to talk to their audiences and perform for their audiences and create new music in some aspects and things like that.
What do you think about, and just sticking on TikTok if it's okay right now, just in regards, because it's been in the news obviously a lot because of the ban, a lot, and we're still sort of unsure as to what the future is going to be like for TikTok. What are your thoughts on the TikTok ban and Red Note or Red Book? I'm not sure if you're aware of it. Americans flooding over to Red Book and sort of voluntarily going over there. And what are your thoughts about this whole sort of saga?
So I get the concern around TikTok itself from a national security standpoint. I can understand the worry that, hey, there's a lot of people in America who are using their devices to access this. We don't know exactly what that's accessing on the phone itself. So I get the worry about that. I don't know how you can ban something that many people use without some sort of uproar at some point in time. I think this is all going to play out. There's going to be an American company that's going to end up purchasing it, or they're going to work out some sort of deal where they purchase the data, or the data storage has to be like, there's going to be something. Because I honestly think the next election could be won or lost over this concept alone.
I saw this morning, Mr. Beast with a TikTok video on a private jet saying, I'm on my way to buy TikTok.
He wants to buy it. Him and Mr. Wonderful both, Kevin O'Neill or Kevin O'Leary, or whatever his name is.
I think a lot of people want to buy it. Yeah.
Correct. A lot of people want to get in on it because,
of course.
I mean, we can argue all day about whether it's good or bad, whether it's rotting brains or it's helping brains. I mean, this was the same argument they had when video games first got released. They're ruining the brains of everyone. Then eventually they're like, oh, what are you talking about? Motor skills have increased with this generation. And now we've got people that are more, so we can argue about whether it's good or bad. It's something that people want. And if people want it, they're going to find a way. So if TikTok somehow gets banned, something else will come take its place. I think the other thing that's really interesting is if you look at it from just a straight business standpoint, I don't think TikTok really probably makes money as an entity. Like, Vine, for example, is the closest thing that we had to an American version of TikTok. Vine had to shut down because they ran out of funding, because they didn't make money. TikTok is backed by the Chinese government. It's a company that's backed. So it doesn't need to make money, if that makes sense. From just a purely at some point, every single one of these big social media platforms has to figure out a way to make money in order to sustain themselves in America, at least. People won't keep throwing money after something that doesn't show how it's going to be profitable.
Well, yeah, and I think TikTok is a complicated one because there's so many elements to different issues that are conflated. Meaning, you have the actual content and the algorithm of what it shows. That's a content thing, and that sort of bumps into free speech in the United States. But then you have the app itself, and what does the app actually do? What is it? How much can is there code there that is problematic? And then you have the data itself, which is a separate issue of let's say there was nothing wrong about what we're showing you in the algorithm or content, but then the data sitting there and what data is stored and how could that be used? And so you have all of these things together in one thing, and then they all have sort of different implications. And now we see they're pulling them out. And of course, lots of people were all for a TikTok ban until it helped them win an election. They're like, TikTok, not so bad.
No, we should never.
I have 14 million followers. Maybe I want to keep those. And so there's a lot of complicated things here. But at least it won't be boring. And to your point, there's a need for it. I don't know if we'll all be, going to speakeasies like our black market TikTok over here, something else to do it. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But certainly, it's just there's a lot of competing issues at the same time that strike at the values of, certainly Americans, but also just citizens around the world. What values do you prioritize?
I can tell you from the perspective of a guy from the UK over here in Europe, we're finding it fascinating because all the Americans creators just suddenly went whoop, and now I'm seeing Norwegian creators and people from France, all over Europe now. I'm seeing them, whereas previously it was just lots of American creators, and the Europeans are sort of going, I didn't even know you guys existed. I never saw you. It's all, sort of flooded because obviously 170 million American, people on there doing their stuff. It's interesting from our perspective. And
then the other thing is, with all of these platforms, I mean, a ton of data is being created. The algorithms are a black box of what's actually been shown. So, it's a slippery slope for, there's lots of other problems that like other apps may have similar issues, problems, potential abuses. They're just not owned by the Chinese government.
Yeah. And they're not the juggernaut that TikTok is. I mean, I have personally, I've stayed off TikTok, knowing like when TikTok came out and people started using it a lot, people would always ask me, are you going to make videos for and I was like, that's like a gambler walking into a casino. Like, I know that is not something I want to, because I would just keep doing it all the time. I would fall into the same, let me look up, every time I would have a spare moment.
It's incredibly addictive, to be fair. Yeah. The dopamine is real, for sure on TikTok.
Yeah. Dopamine is real. Yeah. That should be your next podcast title. The dopamine is real.
Dopamine is real.
There you go. Well, Judson Laipply, first of all, what a great, your place in internet history is secure. Evolution of dance. It holds the test of time. What an interesting perspective to see, that first person view and your legacy is secure. I think it's a video you can watch anytime you want to crack a little smile. I hope the folks at some point, if they haven't already, they must have, the folks that like Crush, like the single best ad for Crush, your t-shirt in that to remind people. And certainly you're a fun guy to talk to. So thank you for joining us to Break the Internet and best wishes for continued success.
Appreciate it.
No, Ben and Tom, I appreciate you having me so much. Thank you so much. It's always fun to talk about it, even though it's going on almost 19 years. So, which in internet life is like 1,000.
Yeah.
Yes, it's more than dog years. Internet years.
Definitely more than dog years.
More than dog years for sure. Thank you. Judson Laipply, Evolution of Dance. Thank you so much.
Uh-oh.